All right, next up we have Joe Fuster, the head of Global Customer Experience for Oracle. Joe has 25 years of experience as a customer experience and technology executive, working with organizations to help them transform and become more customer-centric. Joe has worked for organizations such as SAP and Salesforce. And so with that, I'd like to welcome Joe to the stage. Thank you so much.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. All right. Wow. What a great 2 days it's been so far. And hopefully I'm going to continue this tradition and get us all rolling along. So I'm going to share with you a bit about this notion of how we affect change. And we really have to think in the micro moment. And we're going to talk about that. And then we're going to talk about, I think the second line, the tagline really is interesting, organizational change required. And I thought yesterday during the first panel, we heard a lot about this, and then we talked about how to be human, and then we came through with how the workplace has to change. All very interesting topics. Obviously today, two areas that affect all of us as individuals and humans, and I thought around the patient and around the citizen, we're nailing it. So I get to do this all over the globe, and I have to say, I'm absolutely thrilled by the agenda and by the attendance and the livelihood, or the lively nature of everyone. So let's kind of jump in. All of this starts around, in my mind, how you position customer centricity right up front. So I'd like to ask if all of you can remember when you were a kid and you had a kaleidoscope and it was just a small metal tube. And when you looked through the small metal tube and you twisted it, it was just absolutely wonderful. And every time you turned it just a little, it changed again and again and again. And it was fascination, and it was very interesting to do. And it was beautiful. And I think customer centricity feels a lot like that to all of us. It's to remember what it's like when it's really special, and it's moving, and each pane of glass moves, and along each edge, it's a different experience every time you have it. If you bring that to the notion that each one of those is a micro moment, then when we're talking about customer centricity, this is no different than any of us with our mom, when we're in their arms, when we're comfortable. And now, instead of being around perhaps a book, you're oftentimes around a device. But in this moment, can you speak to this woman? Can you speak to her child? Can you actually make it customer-centric? And continuing on this theme, this same woman, maybe she's going out to get a cell phone. So she starts her journey, right? And how does she find out about the cell phone? Or how does she find out about the mobile? There's a number of different ways. It'll be print ads, and it'll be on a phone, talking to others, etc., as we move along. But as she discovers her own need for any product or service, she continues on down the path, right? And she'll do some research, and she'll do some searching, and she'll do some looking and talking. But this is not unlike any of us, because if we go, eventually we get to shop and buy. Eventually we perhaps place an order online, or we walk into the shop and buy it. We get our device. We go through, maybe something's incomplete or missing, or we have to go get a Bluetooth headset or something like that. Inevitably, we'll post about it. Love my new phone, take a picture, do a selfie, connect with my friends, it's out there. And if we continue on down this path, next time I interact with my carrier, it may be over a billing issue. It might be over some other thing that I want to add to make a payment, to change my address. You start to get the idea. I've damaged my phone, I got it wet, I dropped it, I lost it, I'm going to terminate, I'm angry at the company, they've made me an offer, I've come back, right? I restart my service, and I refer my friends and tell them this is the greatest device ever. I like to walk through things like this because we could have been any one of the speakers yesterday, today, and we're all talking about the same thing. In the abstraction, a customer or a consumer or an individual or a citizen or a patient all goes through the cycle of awareness, decision, and action. And then use of our good or our service, and advocacy pops up 2 or 3 times. And I do this abstraction just because all of us can connect to this, all of us can relate. This could be a B2B situation, this could be a B2C, this could be a government to citizen, or a patient and a doctor. All of us are on our journey, right? And if we look at this and think about it in the abstract, this always reminds me of a string of DNA, as all of us are as unique as our thumbprint, right? As unique as our iris. And this is one woman and one journey, and there's a series of micro moments along that. It's very important to understand that as the brand owner, I don't control that journey. Each decision she makes on her own. While she's in her journey, she's also talking to my competitors. She's talking to her girlfriends, she's going to chat groups, etc. This is the important piece, I think, about how so much has changed over the last 2 decades around CRM, now to customer experience. It's the absolute acknowledgement that nothing is linear. It's the absolute acknowledgement that, again, as the provider of the good or service or as the brand owner, I don't dictate those moments. I can't control the path she's on. What I can do is at each micro moment where she comes to touch me to get my service or good, that's where I have to execute very well. That's what a brand owner can do. That's what a company or a business can do. In the micro moment, are they present and are they on top of it? And if they are, dealing with this one customer in her string of DNA helps me with all the other customers and all the other strings of DNA, right? That's one customer's journey. There's many customers. In fact, I would argue there's infinite possibilities just looking across this room. If I was to take 500 people and send you all on a journey to go acquire something, I have no idea what you're going to do going out of here. And if I give you a deadline of getting it done by the end of the week, you're all going to pursue it differently. As the brand owner to that, I have to make sure when you go look in your mobile device, when you go online, when you call, when you stop in the shop, in that moment, I've provided everything I can to my people. I've empowered them to make your journey special. And if I do it, I win. And that's really where all of this heads. If there's infinite possibilities or infinite paths with which we can engage the consumer, the customer, the citizen, the patient, then I think we have to understand that today's expectation around customer centricity that's changed for all of us because of the likes of a Google and an Amazon, and everything should be that easy. It really is that I have an expectation when I'm on my device, because that's how I'm interacting with you, it's seamless. I go from your system to your system to your system. My expectation is that it's immediate, because quite frankly, all of us are impatient. If I can't find it here, I generally ask a friend, and if they can't find it, then we agree that the provider doesn't know what they're doing, or they have a difficult-to-use app or a bad website. And I really do expect that it's personalized. I've done lots and lots of work over the years. That expectation, truthfully, has always been there. From the small shop where you would go, getting ready for a family event, and they would know your family, and they would make a recommendation about what you should be purchasing in terms of the dinner that you might be hosting, to a very large company where you're getting insurance for your vehicle, and you expect that if you talk to a representative, if you call on the phone, if you're on the website, you're expecting the same. That has never changed. Good service for all of us has always been, they know me, they remember me, they acknowledge me, and they do what I ask. So if this is the expectation, the question in my mind becomes then, how do the underlying systems need to change, right? How do all the systems you work with now need to change? And we've really worked hard on this. Oracle's 144,000 people, spending over $6 billion a year in research and development. And a ton of it goes into the user experience, because traditionally everyone's thought of us as a database company. And as we've worked harder and harder on applications, the number one thing is, how do we make this simple? And if we can simplify, then we can help you innovate and we can help you deliver. So this is really it. When we say innovation, we really mean staying on the front edge, but doing it in the cloud so it's easier for you. And then in delivery, I think it's really important to stop for a minute on the point of deliver. For all of us in any form of B2B or B2C or B2B2C or any sort of business, the number one obligation, if I'm a 5-person company or a 500-person company or 5,000, when I say deliver, I mean you tie yourself back to the CFO's ledger. When you go into that CFO office and you talk to her, the one thing she'll believe in is her own ledger. And the number one thing that drives executives crazy, and I'm sure all of you know this, is when you get 3 sets of numbers, right? You talk to 3 different departments about the same issue and you get 3 sets of numbers. Who wins? The answer is whoever ties back to that CFO ledger. And that's something I work on and I talk about all the time. Deliver means tie back to the ledger, because every CFO I've ever met believes in their own ledger. It's not hard. That's where delivery occurs. Every time I go into Oracle, quite frankly, and I talk about some soft thing we've done, I get chewed up. I get spit out because they want to know, does it tie all the way back? It's too big if you don't tie back. And like I said, it doesn't matter when I'm talking to an emerging enterprise in an emerging country of just 5 people, you have to tie it back to the ledger. That's really where delivery occurs. So I think the next point, and I give you guys a huge applause, a tip of the cap, because everything I've seen over the last couple of days here is all about being humanized. And humanized data at the core is really important. I often feel that big data as a topic dehumanizes all of us. I am not a number. You are not a number. You are not a number. I am not an ID, right? It bothers me when it always starts out the interaction with a number, because people, right, are all of these things. Yes, that big data, all the digital exhaust everybody leaves all around us. By using this every day means that my cell phone provider knows exactly where I am, what I'm doing. Every app I've ever opted into knows what I'm at and what I'm doing. And I think this enormous data gets created, and I worry about how am I being dehumanized. But it's out there. The second one is when I'm in the moment, this is bring this big data back, but use it relevant to me. I don't mind giving you my digits if you remember that I'm a person and not a number. And I really think everybody's got to become aware of, down there it says 72, that's really this idea of the connected device in your home. You know, a lot of the innovation we're going to see in the very near term is just a recombination of things. It's all the wonderful stuff going on with voice and with devices that are smart. And in the not too distant future, just like I can say, hey Siri, or I can say, hey Alexa, and I can talk to those types of devices, they're coming into the mainstream of business as well as my personal life. And it'll be a combination of virtual reality or enhanced or augmented reality. AR and VR means new touch points are emerging, things like gestures. And that will be another customer touch point I have to think about, being there in the micro moment. That home device, in this example, monitors how well my house is doing. It'll keep it hot, or it'll keep it cold, or it'll check to make sure it's locked up. That's more of this big data. The big thing here in the lower left is regardless of all the big data and regardless of how much I've given you or you've collected about me anonymously, when I am face-to-face with your representative, it's got to be about the human. And when it's not about the human, it goes bad. And that's not interesting. I thought about how do I illustrate this in a medium-sized company, in a large company, and relate it to something small. And all of us listen to music, right? So my first customer conversation here for a minute is about a music company. It's about Denon and Maritz and people that make speakers. And if we think about how much change has occurred in the music industry, in the delivery of music, I always smile. I like to ask when I'm in smaller groups, what was the very first piece of music you ever got that you actually paid for? For those of you who are old enough, mine was an 8-track tape. It was a cassette tape that was enormous. And you would pop it in, and I listened to a band called The Cars. And the name of the album was The Cars. And I thought it was so cool. I had my 8-track, and I got The Cars. When I talk to my own children, I have 4 of them. Most of them kind of get it, they think it's cute that I have CDs that I used to play music on, right? I say most of them because I have a daughter that's only had music streamed to her whole life to her, right? And so some of you know vinyl very well. And the big ones, the small ones, the A and B side, all of us, again, knew the cassette tape. All of us knew the memory stick or the stick with our music, right? Think about being in the music delivery business like these guys here at Denon, or the sound delivery business, and how much their business has changed. Denon had a problem. The problem was around people were putting speakers in their bathrooms. And then, what a surprise, they weren't built for high humidity where there's moisture in the bathroom, and the speakers were failing. And people would call in, and Denon along the way had been experimenting with the Internet of Things, of putting a piece of hardware inside the speaker so that it could connect to the support center. And they found more often than not how they discovered it was people labeled the speakers in their house like living room, kitchen, bedroom. All the ones that were failing were labeled bathroom. And so their engineers went out and did a little bit of work, and they realized what they had to do to make them waterproof. And then they immediately used the connectivity to go look across all of their customers for anybody that had speakers labeled bathroom. And they proactively contacted all of the people who had speakers labeled bathroom because they had about 3 months in the bathroom before they failed. And they actually went ahead and replaced them. And it's an absolutely fabulous story because I promise you, if you have a device like a speaker in your bathroom that's about to go bad, and the vendor calls you or sends you a text or an email or some communication that says, we're going to replace this for you ahead of time because it'll fail since it's labeled in the bathroom, you're going to talk about that experience with everyone. You're going to become even that much more loyal. And that's what all of us expect. When you've collected all this data, even down to the level of my house and where I keep my speaker, but you actually use it for the positive, you've cemented a relationship forever. Extremely customer-centric. They were looking to move from being reactive to proactive. They were facing competition, their market was changing. An awful lot of people who are younger, like my own kids, don't know their brand, and they wanted to make an impact. It's had a huge benefit for them, right? By putting the Internet of Things technology into a product, by getting out to customers, by collecting the data, and then thinking ahead about how to prevent future problems, right? They improve their customer service environment, and actually people buying like advanced care for their products, for them generates about $180,000 a month. What's really interesting is it means they paid for their project inside of a year. They did everything, all of the change management, all of the new technology, all of the customer information. They did it in about a year. All of their agents became more effective, not the least of which is because when somebody called in, they already knew what was going on. They didn't spend all their time collecting data. They talked to them about a challenge, and then they were able to solve it. And since they've created what they call a customer-centric product that kind of phones home to work on fixing itself, they've actually built 2 million of these things. So it can be done at scale, and it's not that sophisticated. So all of us deal with music, regardless of B2B, B2C, individual, citizen, patient. Isn't it a wonderful example of a business thinking about how to look ahead and solving a customer's problem before it occurs and becoming more customer-centric in the process? Now, I was trying to think, what else does everybody have regardless of their station? If you've made it here, you have to deal with cars. So my other example is about a car. Peugeot is a wonderful brand. Peugeot is the 9th largest car manufacturer in the world. It's a French company. And they have interesting challenges because in one sense, they're a very large manufacturer. In another sense, they actually have a fairly small set of direct customers known as their dealers. And in another sense, they're just like any other B2C organization because the end consumers buy their products from a dealer, right? That's this process. Peugeot was looking to enhance their brand reputation, again, because they were facing external forces, right? They were facing all kinds of Asian manufactured vehicles that were chewing away at their brand and at their margins, and they had to change. To do it, they decided that they needed to have an integrated experience for their main constituents. What's really interesting here is they do talk customers first, and when they think customers, they really think about their dealers because the dealers actually buy the inventory and sell it. Notice they think about consumers, but I love the fact that Peugeot realized they have to think about the employees. And I think yesterday we heard multiple times about if you want a good customer experience, design a good employee experience first, and one will follow the other. Peugeot thought exactly this way. What they did, because they had so many different areas to start on or to work on, is they decided to start first just with their call center. And could they improve that environment, right? By putting in new technology, they actually drove down their agent handling time. And it's interesting the dilemma we all face. If I get my customer off the phone sooner, is it better or worse support? You really have to ask the person that received the support to say whether it was bad or good. But by doing so, by putting in and enhancing that environment first, they were able to knock down the time people were on the phones. They were able to improve the efficiency. And this is the one that actually changed for them. Peugeot, believe it or not, gets about 600,000 calls a year. And it's really interesting because a lot of those calls came from people just like myself or yourself in this room. When was the last time you thought to actually call the auto manufacturer? I mean, you really don't. You go see a dealer, you go see your friends, you go on the internet and everything. So they started to look more closely at the kind of people that actually called Peugeot. And what they found out was it was people who were actually interested in buying a Peugeot and couldn't find what they needed through a dealer or online. And out of these 600,000 calls a year, which they were kind of touching or triaging and putting away, there was actually about 10% or 60,000 that were actually what you would consider in their business a hot lead, where somebody's actually coming to buy a car and comparing Peugeot to somebody else. And by changing the way they handled this, they were able to go back to their dealer community across the world and give them 60,000 new leads of people who were actually buying cars. It's like bringing a check to somebody or some cash to somebody and just handing it to them in their business. It was an enormous change. And by starting in their contact center first, before their sales systems, before their marketing systems, before their commerce systems, starting just there, because you can start with contact centers so small, and updating there, those 60,000 new leads had an enormous benefit for them across their relationship with all of their dealers. And they were thinking of their dealers like employees. It had an enormous benefit on the call center employees, who were now treated more like a revenue center than a cost center. And all the way around, Peugeot's results have improved. Their brand has done better because they started somewhere manageable, small in a cost center, or call center, excuse me. They thought a lot about what they would do with these leads, and they came back and they started nurturing their dealers, better customer relationships. Very, very interesting. All of us care about music, all of us care about cars. Any of our businesses could follow these kinds of examples to get ahead. And those are the sorts of ideas around simplify first. From the simplification, you can drive your innovation in a business process, you can change your business model, and then you can actually deliver by tying it back to something hard the CFO cares about. Creating customer-centric environments really requires simplification, innovation, and delivery. It's that simple. The change agents, in my mind, are the people like all of you, the people in this room. In this process of becoming customer-centric, the change agents are the true heroes. The people that are willing to take the risk, put their neck on the line, and say, here's how we should do it. I have, as I said, 4 kids. One of them is studying chemical engineering at a level I don't understand. I have another one that actually has followed his father along, and he's in a call center, and he's doing business development, and he's cold calling. He's learning what it's like. My next one got married last December, thrilling, and both she and my new son-in-law work for Jet.com. It's a .com business. I'll explain it in a minute. But what's interesting is, after 6 months in, the business is growing rapidly. She called my wife to complain that there's no process for things she's getting asked to do. And my wife said, honey, that's why they hired you. Go create a process, and hung the phone back up. And I mentioned that so you get an idea, because I'm going to talk about Jet, but that's really interesting. She and her business is one of those heroes. She went from being kind of a member representative to a phone-in club business to actually dealing with their vendors. She's taking a risk. She's putting her neck on the line. I'm extremely proud of her, and she's learning about, hey, if it's not there, go do it. Take the initiative. So all of you who are attempting to become more customer-centric, I applaud you. I again salute you. You're the heroes in your companies. The next piece of this, then, oh, hitting the wrong button. I'm going to blind somebody. Sorry about that. Is the idea that every one of these examples, you've got to think about your customer experience first. You've got to look under and say, how can we create these environments to be seamless, to be personalized, and be immediate? And it has to rest on a core of humanized data. That's truly where it has to start. Actually, everything is about the data. And I say this being part of Oracle, where we've worked on data for 40 years. But in reality, every business that I've worked with always starts with some sense of what's going on. The data will lead them where they want to go to find the answers. And it's got to be humanized. Because if it's not humanized, terrible things happen. Terrible things happen. I think of the guy who got dragged off the airplane that everybody talks about. And I was fortunate shortly after that to be sitting on a United Airlines airplane. And I met the CEO of United. And I had a one-to-one dialogue with him about the business problem. I live in Chicago, and that's where United's headquarters. And at the end of the day, he said, you know what, we've changed. We had to change the process that allowed our agents to do something that was off the script. That was it. I mean, he knew about all the other problems, acknowledged all of it, took full accountability for it, but they've actually given the agents the chance to go off a script, and now things are improving rapidly. He said, effectively, I told him I talk about them all the time, and he said, yeah, we've got to get more human. Everybody recognizes it. It's hard to do, but humanized data is really important. If I was to draw a picture of it or show something, in my mind, all of our data stores that we talk about are important, are around customer data. They're around your core data, your financials, your billing, your shipping, et cetera, and they're around all of the social data, right? Those are really the 3 different data pools. We bring it together, try and humanize it, and help you simplify, innovate, and deliver. This is really the architecture I would show rather than the normal hard boxes when I'm talking to a business person. When I'm visiting with my head of sales, my head of marketing, my CHRO, my CEO, my CIO, all these wonderful titles, this is how I would show it. If you get it right, I think it can be beautiful, right? I think you can, if you go back to what it's like when you experience something and you're delighted, you can be beautiful, right? This is becoming customer-centric in the micro moment. To do this now, this is the end piece of what I want to talk about, but I was asked to talk about how are organizations changing? What's the change management required to actually break down the silos and get this accomplished? So I believe, I hear business speak all the time about two things. I hear customer-centric or business model, something's got to change. The other one I hear these days for the last 3 or 4 years is digital transformation. Always drives me a little nuts because there's all this energy behind it. But when we talk about digital transformation or a new business model, I think we've got to think about, the other one I love is digital disruption. We're all being disrupted, just in case you didn't know. I think a lot about disruption and transformation, and they're really opposite sides of the same coin. They're always spinning. Somebody disrupts my industry, and some of the people in my industry transform, and others in my industry go away. It is this combination of disruption and transformation. Disruptors tend to be the first people in. Transformers seem to be the people who win long term, right? It's always very easy for someone very small to do something disruptive. And long term, if you take a longer view of things, maybe not 3 months or 6 months, but 1 year, 2 years, 3 years down the road, the people that transform their enterprise actually stay in business longer. It's oftentimes not the person who does the initial disruption. It's everybody else that watches it, gets it, and changes. So if we think about this transformation piece, I'd like to go through again an example that I hope everybody can relate to. If you understand music and you understand cars, then I'm fairly certain you understand retail at any size, right? If we think about the retail industry as a proxy for all of us, regardless of our industry, what was retail when we were all growing up? It was traditional brick and mortar stores. And those stores competed with each other based on truly, I think, two things: the experience, or how well they knew you, and their price. And that was it. And the disruption that happened to the retail business on a global basis that started in a town much, much smaller than Cape Town, much smaller, like one of the normal villages that I might find an hour or two out of Cape Town, in Bentonville, Arkansas. And they decided they were going to become really customer-centric, and they talked to all their customers, and what everybody wanted was everyday low pricing. They didn't even really care about the relationship they had with the shop owner. They wanted the lowest price possible. So in a little town in Bentonville, Arkansas, I'm sure you've all heard of them, this company, Walmart, started changing everything to be only about the lowest price all the time. And I've done a lot of work with Walmart. After they figured out how to drive all the cost out of their own business, they figured out how to start driving cost out of their supplier's business. And they squeezed their supply chain tighter and tighter. And if you wanted to do business with Walmart as a manufacturer or a supplier, you had to lower your price to get in. And they would tell you right up front, if you make toilet paper or if you make peanut butter, this is my price point, and if you don't get under it, you're not in my store. And they squeezed everybody. In fact, at one point in my life, I worked with 20 of their largest suppliers, and every one of them had to change their systems to perfectly integrate to Walmart to move it even faster. That was the disruption that occurred. It was between the traditional brick and mortar to another brick and mortar. It was about a business model change that became more customer-centric by getting always to the everyday low price. Who disrupted Walmart? Right? Amazon, right? And what was Amazon's disruption? It wasn't brick and mortar. It wasn't trying to get to an everyday low price. It said, in all of our studies, we figured out that people don't like the friction in the buying process. They don't like the fact that things are complicated. And if anybody has ever gone to an Amazon screen, it's beautiful. It's pretty much a search box. You put in what you want, and up it pops, right? Amazon's disruption was around e-commerce. And they had no physical stores. And I think, myself included, 1999, 2000, I tried to buy something online to see what the experience was like. I smile. One of the smart guys I work with talks about he looked ahead and he bought books about AI and computer programming, all this cool stuff. I bought like a calendar with dogs for my mom. So I just wanted to get the experience and see how they did. And you can go find a transaction with them from your very first time to today. And I was motivated yesterday to go look and see what I actually bought. I always like to say I bought a Harry Potter book for my kid like I was this cool dad. No, I bought a dog calendar for my mom. So Walmart didn't sit still. Walmart decided, we see a disruptor on our horizon, we're going to build a new business. And they added a website to Walmart stores, and it was a colossal failure. And it went on for about a year, and it was awful. And they were trying to do everything in Bentonville, Arkansas, and they didn't have the talent, so then they tried to bring people to Bentonville, still a small town, and it wasn't working. Their second time they thought, well, we'll spin up another business, like on the other side of the highway, here in Bentonville, and we'll separate it out of our headquarters, and we'll give those people a chance to create their own answers. And it didn't work. Their third time they said, okay, to heck with it. We're going to go where all the people who do the best e-commerce research and development are. And they opened up Walmart.com near the San Francisco airport where all these smart people in Silicon Valley lived. They went to all their competitors. They hired the best and the brightest. They spent an enormous amount of money. And 3 years later, they were doing $10 billion US. Yeah. Oh, they're saying they love me. They're crying it's so good. And so what they did is they built a new business model, and they continued to maintain two, right? Walmart.com is different than Walmart, different business processes, addresses a different consumer need, both very customer-centric. What did Amazon do? They didn't sit still, right? They said, we're going to get to Amazon Prime. We're going to go with the most valuable customers. The innovation was subscription billing, right? And now you self-select in, you pay for free delivery, and they turn out to be the most valuable customers in retail. What is Walmart's answer to that? They bought Jet.com. Remember where I said my daughter's working, right? They tried a couple times, and this time they were a little faster than when they tried to become Walmart.com. They built Jet.com, right? It's Amazon Prime for Walmart. This is their third business model. The Jet.com people are not directly connected to the Walmart.com people, and they're not directly connected to Walmart. The innovators and the disruptors keep chasing each other. And so what does Amazon do in response to Jet.com? Because they're doing very well. They went back and bought brick and mortar grocery stores. They said, we're going to go look at a category, and how can I get under 2-hour delivery, not 2-day delivery, free for people who are my subscribers in the grocery store. So what does Walmart do? Right? Walmart a couple weeks ago bought Bonobos. That's custom clothing. You're going to go get in a shirt made or a suit made or a dress made. You actually send in your measurements to Bonobos. They keep it on file, and they will produce custom clothing. You know how they sell that to you? Via Jet.com. I'm absolutely fascinated by this, because if you are a retailer and you aren't playing the game with the others, these disruptions are happening in brick and mortar, and they're happening in, obviously, the .com space, but now they're getting down to category by category competition. All of it to become more customer-centric. It's a wonderful example, because Amazon started extremely small. It was Bezos and a couple guys. Walmart started really small, right? And Jet.com right now was bought for a couple $billion, and they employ my daughter and my son-in-law. It's brilliant. Thank God they're off the payroll. So I just want to make this comment then about how each one of these businesses changed, and my recommendation to you all around organizational silos. We're all familiar with these CEO and CFO. Today they kind of rule the roost. Depending on your age, you remember the chief operating officer used to be super important. Now truly the CFO has eclipsed the COO in most cases. Apologies to any COO out here, right? The CHRO, the human resources officer, and the chief marketing officer, right? Both innovations during our lifetimes. And then the idea of the CIO or the chief customer officer. I tend to put these people in the lower right. They are the ones that oftentimes have to think about outward-looking roles. But in reality, how do you break down the silos? And that's the new roles. So I just wanted to introduce the 3 most common titles we're seeing globally around chief revenue officer, chief digital officer, and chief growth officer. Since I have to speed it up a little, I'll just make a few words. The chief revenue officer is a new role responsible for all revenue-generating processes in the organization, accounting for driving better integration and alignment across all related functions of marketing, sales, service, and importantly, billing. So more and more we're seeing CROs instead of the head of sales, because I used to have sales-generating revenue, I used to have service-generating revenue, and others. The CRO is a very common upscale there. The next one is this idea of chief digital officer. It's again a transformational role. You're supposed to help an analog business become digital, but in reality, in my mind, it's the CDO has got to oversee mobile apps, social media, virtual goods, web-based marketing. It's saying it's not just being a steward around data, but it's actually being responsible for the digital transformation and then giving these people the power over other areas. The last one is the Chief Growth Officer. And this is interesting. All of us drink another one of these iconic brands. Everybody here has probably tasted a Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola just got rid of their CMO. For the first time, a big company ended the role of the CMO and replaced it with the Chief Growth Officer. So just a heads up for everybody in marketing, Coca-Cola's point is it's not enough to get likes and favorites and looks and generate leads. It's got to be about growth, and so the Chief Growth Officer is there. I'll end with this. I think we're going to hear about a few other things. There's been a lot of talk about AI. I think you're all going to start hearing about Chief Privacy Officers. I know we're going to see Chief Data Officers, and I thought yesterday was inspirational again because I do think there will be somebody in charge of human factors as we become more customer-centric and as we become more advanced. So that's it from Oracle today. Thank you all for participating, and I look forward to speaking with you.
Thank you so much, Joe. And yeah, I'm sorry, there's just so much that we want to say, and there's so much interesting information to share. It's hard to
No worries.
to cram it all in. So thank you so much.